Hello, welcome to my channel for Evolved Humans. I am Ms. Day. This is a reading for someone who I think is very passionately... Okay. There's a huge mixture of like blue and red. And the heart of this reading is like a balanced out person between the masculine and the feminine. So I think that whoever is getting this, there is a large feeling that it's almost like you're this warrior spirit who only hears the highest call. I don't know what the heck that's about, but like that's what it feels like. I feel like I just see people like, you only hear the highest call. And I think that's it. What I mean is it kind of like ties into being a tough nut to crack when you're someone who's been through a lot and you've seen a lot of hard evidence of like not trusting things in this world for good reason. Evidence. Because whoever this is for, you have overcome a lot of battles. And like one of the quickest things I got out of this was in overcoming your own, like it's like a victorious feeling with yourself and your own struggles. And then, but it almost seems like as you have elevated, you have outgrown people around you, like people that I think you've outgrown certain lifestyle habits. And when you do that, I think you've elevated to a certain degree where it's like you came full circle and you came back, like you're more aligned with your true self, but that means that you're not necessarily able to stay plugged in with those around you at this time. It's like that moment after your growth where you have to have a second of, oh crap, like I have to let something go though. And I completely understand that sucking, personally. However, the cool thing about that is there's such a patience in the universe that a lot of times we don't feel because we live in this body of chaos and like in the world of chaos, but there's always like a patience with our own growth. So when we are hesitant to let go of things that are not necessarily nurturing our future or the goals that we know we have set back there in the back of our mind, it's like we know we have to kind of let go of certain things, but that's kind of the way of it though, isn't it? Like where you just have to let things go as you become more equipped to feel confident that you can let it go now. It makes me think of all the things that we shouldn't do. Like, and the thing is, when the world is so full of so many things that are kind of constantly heavy, that's what the message I keep getting. I keep feeling like whoever's going to get this reading, like that's what I mean by like you only hear the highest call, because you are so aware of the negative around you that I feel like you've actually developed into overcoming it habitually. Like I think that you have to overcome all the low frequency stuff as a lifestyle. And I think that that elevated you and elevated you and elevated you, but then you kind of reach that stalemate at the end of all that growth where you're like, but who's here with me? Who's with me though? And like, it's kind of wild because it almost feels like in this reading, someone is turning away from themselves where they're like, well, no, I know I've done all of that, but it's almost like you don't want to celebrate because you don't have anyone to celebrate with. And then that becomes something that you have to be aware of and then avoid looking at. So it's like that's where our ability to overcome can get in our own way. It's like it can make you unable to see that you're missing out when you're so used to missing out on certain types of connections. And whoever this is for, this feels very much like you are a warrior spirit, like just immediately. And I think that's because you've overcome some serious trauma. And anyone who does understand that, which you do, It's that when you overcome trauma, all that means is you've adapted to your own responses to it. So you know that you react to certain things of the low frequency, which is why it makes sense that you avoid those things. But this is crazy because I keep kind of getting this whiff of those people that think that if you don't have intimate connections, then you're safe. And it's actually kind of, it ties into something I was thinking and writing about earlier today, which is I'll just share this. In all my personal readings, something that I really recognized, the heart of this reading is balance. So you've really worked to attain a balance in yourself and with yourself, just in your own space and with your own self, which is quite an accomplishment. I kept wanting to say this as an achievement, you've achieved this state with yourself. Even if it's just a state of being that is aware, it feels like there is a need to choose your battles underneath. I feel like you're a rational mindset with that, but it feels like don't choose your battles so much that you never battle. You have to speak up. And there's something else too. It's I feel there's this vulnerability in the emotional acceptance of things that are true, where you have to kind of just, if you've ever reached, I'm thinking of this moment where you kind of reach a state of accepting something that is so negative that you have to accept that it's reality, because it is. But there's something that has made you unable to ignore it any longer. And that's kind of what this feels like. It's you've overcome so much that the question about this reading isn't can you do it? Can you handle it? Can you keep going? It's more so you're kind of wondering where's the reward? Oh, okay, so that's something else. I don't think, oftentimes we're reaching because we're well, I'm reaching into abundance. I'm trying to manifest a new lifestyle. I'm trying to manifest this new result. I want to experience this lifestyle, so I have to make myself feel like I'm already living it. That really makes it sound more magical, that you can just jump and have that experience if you're just willing to experience it. But the thing is, this is kind of that moment where one of the most beautiful things that I've seen in these personal readings over all the years and clearing homes and stuff, one of the most beautiful things about people, even full, I'm not trying to be all gender weird, but full grown men who have a hard time holding back, it's so frequently that can feel humiliating to a person. It feels like humility, but it's vulnerability. And that's being vulnerable to the fact that you can't change the truth. And when you experience pain, it's vulnerability can feel like the enemy, because you're why would I want to feel the pain that I'm aware of? But that's just it. It's there. You wouldn't be turning your gaze away from your inner self if there weren't something that you were avoiding. And that's what this feels like. It's like somebody who's so used to distracting themselves with good intentions. Because I don't feel like you do bad things. I feel like you try. And even if you trip, you're all right, we'll keep going. But it's this feels like there's pain that you're trying to stand upright and not have to deal with because you shouldn't feel that pain. And I think it's vulnerability. Because this feels it's the whole vibe of this is a very balanced person, but the actual face of it, I think the portrayal to yourself that you're like the image you're trying to make real that isn't. And that's what we do. We try to kind of put off what we want to be reality when we don't like the reality in here. Sometimes we can just kind of do things out here that equal that same frequency in there, but they're not really what we want to do. It's just kind of our own way of creating distractions from ourselves, for ourselves. And I feel like that's what this whole reading is for you. It's like you're so used to distractions and even distracting yourself from them, even if it's with positive mindset and positive motions forward. Because I also feel like you just put one foot in front of the other. Like you just have a steady pace forward, steadfast. But that came after serious turbulence. Like it feels like you sprouted and had to fight to grow. So we have this tendency to do that. Like if you go through the world and you know what it is, oftentimes like we're gonna do what we're used to in order to survive. And vulnerability can feel useless if it's only between you and yourself. But I feel like that's like the message. It isn't just between you and yourself. It's between you, it's between your outlook and what you want to experience. Like it's so weird. It's like it makes me think of how we talk about how people talk about manifesting, the results they want in life. Like, oh, you want a dream car, you have to envision yourself having it and emotionally experience what that would feel like. But in this case, it's almost like our ability, especially when you go through trauma, like our trauma responses can be so adapted to responding before processing that now, even if you've healed and you've overcome and you've gotten through all of these different obstacles, it's like you still have to remember what you've been through in order to keep solid footing going forward. Because whoever you are, you've worked really hard to have control. And you deserve what you've worked for. So it's like that balance is what it is in here. That's what the whole reading is like this is a balanced individual in spirit, and like your force of will is just as strong as your spirit. But it's like that can work against you when your human vehicle has already adapted to fight that vulnerability, because that vulnerability is dangerous. That's a potential threat. Crazy, because I was thinking of this earlier today too, and it's like just with my own situations in life, like that reaction, this is so crazy. I had a dream. So like in this dream, this is so weird. I had this really clear obstacle course dream. Very, very strange. And it's making me think of this reading because throughout the dream, I'm like going through weird obstacle courses. Like there's a wall full of like tree branches to climb up to escape certain threats. And I saw a mountain lion. But in my dream, I was like, oh, that mountain lion can chase me up this tree. I'm done. I quit. And then I like woke up out of the dream. But when I woke up, it was like I just kept spinning in my mind. I don't know, this was in the last like 4 nights. And I just kept spinning in my mind over like, why did I run away from a mountain lion in a dream? And the reason that like it's making me think of it in this reading is because what I realized was a mountain lion. I didn't see a lion. I didn't see like a tiger. I didn't see a cat that was just gonna chase me. I saw something that was stronger than I was and definitely was able to harm me physically. Like it was definitely the fittest between the two of us, physically. But in my brain, I knew that a mountain lion, I haven't looked it up since then, but I don't think you're supposed to run from a mountain lion necessarily. Like, I think you're supposed to like scare them back, like just make a big noisy fool of yourself to frighten them back and to just kind of like intimidate them away. I don't really know, but that's what I was working on all day that day, where I was like, that's what we do in our trauma responses. We react before we think, because unfortunately for so many of us, we developed having to do that. And it's like then physiologically we're reacting before we're able to process, do we need to react and block that stuff inside of us? Or do we need to let that fully function and process through? So that's what this reading is for. It's like you have full control, but this is that moment where like you having control really comes into play in a new way, if you want it to. This is where there's an opportunity to have that vulnerability. Instead of being afraid of it, it's like now you have to evolve your perception with what you've already evolved through as a person. Because that's the only one. This feminine masculine thing, when you're experiencing your body's response, your trauma responses, like when it involves that accept or block or the fight or flight, when it involves that response in your systems, it's your body alarming you to a potential threat. It's not saying block it at all costs. It's not saying look out, look out. It's saying, do I block this? Do you want this in? Do you want to accept this? And it's like, just like in my dream where I'm like in the back of my mind, I'm thinking it's a mountain lion. I had information in my brain about a mountain lion, but I did not care. I did not process that information. All I did was react in fear, and I booked it. I was like, cat, blah, and just ran. And like, in this reading, this feels like reacting is your habit. This is where healing is not over just by processing emotions. We've already developed to react to certain frequencies of information a certain way. When it's a trauma response, a lot of times that means that we're reacting to something that is emotional, period. It could be good, it could be bad, but when we know that it could possibly potentially traumatize us, then all systems are like on alert. Like, do we let this one in? Do we let this in? Is this a threat, or is this an opportunity for an interaction that could be good for us? And that's where vulnerability can be terrifying, but this is where you have to trust what you know, and what you know is you have survived everything you have been through. And you have not only survived it and are barely hanging by a thread, you're all right. You're okay. And I think maybe you don't necessarily feel like everything's going to be okay because you might not have a visible connection that knows what you've been through. But that's what this whole reading is like, you're the authority. What you've been through did not stop you, and it did not weaken you. It's just that vulnerability, like what I was going to say with that too, it's very emotional. I know, duh, because that's what vulnerable is. Like, it has to be something tender. But like, when you fear what's going on inside of you, it's not going to be like, oh, I'm scared to feel. You're not going to consciously necessarily think that. Sometimes it seems like whoever you are, it seems like your response is it's almost like a stone wall. Like, your response is like, oh, no expectations is safer anyway. Oh, should have seen that one coming. So it's almost like you getting through your own growth and coming out on top doesn't feel like you came out on top, because you're like, where are the bells and whistles? Why am I not feeling this great sense of relief, even though like I'm solidly more healthy. And I feel like it's because you need to accept your own company. Like, but I know there's a lot of people that just, you do. But what this feels like is, if this is for you, it feels like you not only need to accept your own company, you need to be able to enjoy it. Because you're not going to find that joy out here if you can't feel it in here first. Don't go seeking what you can't make happen in here first. Because a lot of times we make that mistake, and it's almost like, especially if you've gone through a lot of hard times in your life, where we have a tendency to sort of just like expect better for ourselves. But when we wear that as sort of an outlook on the world, it's almost like that's what they're seeing. They're seeing our attitude. They're not seeing that we've walked through a lot, and that's why we have to be really careful, and that's why we have to really process and take things one step at a time and go slower than other people when it comes to being super vulnerable. And so like with this, it's like you have to know that you are strong enough to be vulnerable all by yourself because of everything you've already gone through. Like, you're already strong enough. And that's actually something that's in my members space right now. One of the most important things I'm really trying to focus on is that we have to be an authority figure over our own selves if we're going to be accountable for other people. Like, if we're going to be an authority figure for someone else, it has to start here. Same with healing. Like, if you want to help other people heal, then you need to really experience healing at a core level, because how can you help them get out of the dark if you haven't gotten out of the dark yet yourself? So it's control, it's opportunity to like take that control. So something in my member space that I'm going to talk about again is this. It's like, it's almost like when we always need a parent, no matter how old we are. So it's like when you're looking for someone to kind of validate you or give you sort of like that pat on the back, like, wow, look what you've become. And you don't have it like actually out here saying that to you. Sometimes we forget that our voice is valid too. Like, you need to be your own parent when it comes to your own systems and be like, vulnerability is not dangerous because I'm going to protect like what's in there. Like, you trust yourself to be vulnerable in the first place. This is your most immediate environment. So, and this is, okay, so that's the other thing. At first, like, the vibe of this is not anything about like fight, but I think that that's what the past was. It might even be kind of a recent thing, but it feels like this reading is for someone who fought very hard to maintain or re-establish a balance in themselves. And then you did, but then it's like you did it and you almost surprised yourself, like how well I think that you did this. And I think that that kind of left you at this weird stalemate where it's like, okay, well, what did I win if no one's here? Like, if I'm not with anyone that I wanted here, or if I'm not aligned with anyone in the visible world who's like understanding the same types of things as I am. And that can feel really lonely. But I think that a lot of times that is because it spreads that way. Like, if you just can't take it, Sometimes you can do what I did in my dream and you can be like, I'm out, I quit, done. Like, let them get me. Or you can just be like, or you can be smarter than I was in my dream and process first and take a minute, take a beat and be like, what if this feeling is the catalyst because my force of will could handle all of this and stabilize me? No one else around me is fighting, but I am. What if that's because you are the catalyst for another seed? So like, don't ever underestimate what you can do. That's the other thing. it's coming full circle. In the beginning, it felt like I was talking to someone who I just keep picturing like this little pocket of people who sort of do the alone thing and I know that it's because you're creative, it's because you focus on your own thing, you're totally cool being alone, but it's like there's also this reality underneath, which is you're safer alone. You know what to expect between you and yourself, at least. So I feel like that feels stable. But sometimes it's not necessarily stable if you're not safe when you re-enter connections and interacting in relationships with other people. It's like you have to know what it's like to have a strong and a good relationship in order to like be a part of healthy, strong relationships. So I don't know why I keep thinking about people that like just feel alone, but that's what this kind of feels like. And that can be that way when you're just a fighter, when you are a human who is a survivor. It can feel really, really lonely, and it can feel like no one knows what you've been through, and maybe no one knows what you've been through, but you do. They can't know if you don't know first. So it's like wearing it as an attitude is different than respecting what you've gone through. Like self-respect is a reward. That's a reward. Like maybe it's not a tangible thing. Maybe it's not a car that's manifested. Maybe it's not because you wrote down I'm going to have $30,000 by this day. But like having self-respect is a reward. Sometimes you need to have that moment with yourself and be like, I got here. And it feels to me like whoever's around you, like guides, are wanting you to have that moment too. So I'm going to leave this one here. I hope this was helpful. Definitely let me know if this applies to you in the reading or in the comments, and I'll see you in the next reading. All right, bye.